Guys, this is S&P 500 mid-week update today on Wednesday, September 25th, 2024. Now that the S&P 500 is in the bullish breakout condition and is trading above the trend line, this clearly means that there is natural as well as technical bullish support to the S&P 500, as I have discussed on Monday and Tuesday in the pre-market update and in the subsequent updates. Okay, the only thing which is keeping pressure on the market is the MACD and the SRSI on the weekly chart. However, if the S&P 500 keeps on moving up, in that case the stochastic RSI will turn bullish on the weekly chart. This means that MACD will remain bearish, but stochastic RSI will go bullish, and it will cancel the bearish impact which was caused by both of these, the technical indicators. This means that now S&P 500 will be free to move up further without any such fear. Although there will be some fear that there may come a sudden fall or a surprise fall, however, any fall will then be contained or will then be restricted. Now, before I talk about the numbers, you must understand that Dow Jones has hit the saturation yesterday, and this saturation was through the stochastic RSI. Okay, and this was the first day. This means that now today onwards, any movement, any time, any day, Dow Jones is under technical compulsion to give at least one red candle, and when the Dow Jones will do so, then the S&P 500 will also be forced to do the same. However, today chances are not much, because today we are anticipating that S&P 500 will hit the saturation. But whether it will hit the saturation for 100% or not, so that I will mention in the first update. Okay, and yes, once there comes a condition when the S&P 500 is saturated, as well as the Dow Jones is also set. See, Dow Jones has already hit the saturation yesterday. Today, if it moves up any further, then again that will be the second day of saturation, and most likely either today or tomorrow, if there comes continuous bullish movement, then there will be absolute saturation, and at the same time it will be overbought. In a similar manner, S&P 500, it might not hit the absolute saturation, but it will be heavily saturated, and it is also expected to enter into the overbought condition. Then, considering all of these the factors, S&P 500, Dow Jones, and similarly the same thing is in the Nasdaq. Okay, all of the indices will saturate. This means that there will be a fall. There will be at least one red candle, one good red candle, something like this kind of candle or something like this kind of candle. Means intraday 1.5%, 1 to 1.5% movement. Okay, that you will see, and eventually it will form a red candle. But whenever this will be about to happen, okay, I will update you through the pre-market first or the second update, okay, and the final update. So this is with the saturation. Now let's talk about the bullish restriction in the Dow Jones. Okay, see, Dow Jones is around its trend line, and this is a long-term trend line in the Dow Jones. Okay, Dow Jones is reeling under pressure around this the trend line. However, the important point is that yesterday Dow Jones was able to move up and was able to close as green even though it was around its trend line. This indicates heavy bullishness in the market. Otherwise, this was not possible, right? This means that still Dow Jones can be seen moving up, but again the trend line will come into the picture. Now let me simplify it for you. Again, a trend line breakout condition. Up, above, this the trend line means more and heavy bullish movement. Failure at the trend line means bearish movement, which can eventually turn into the correction. So yesterday in my update, I mentioned that 42,260 in the Dow Jones. Okay, and this is where the trend line will be for at least for today and tomorrow. Okay, this means that if there comes an open above the trend line and a closing above the trend line, means a clear bullish breakout. Okay, no secondary condition. If there comes an open below the trend line but closing above the trend line, then wait for one more day. Okay, and if the same happens, or if there comes an open and the closing above the trend line, clear bullish breakout. And as of now, the S&P 500 has gained, and also the Dow Jones has gained the natural and the technical bullish movement. This means that as of now, chances are pretty high that, or pretty heavy that, the Dow Jones and the S&P 500 can do so. Okay, so this trend line is the important factor in determining the near-term bullish movement or the bearish movement. Similarly, a failure or rejections from the trend line means it will be coming down. Okay, when the Dow Jones will be coming down, then S&P 500 will also be forced to come down. Now, the same trend line, okay, here. And also let's talk about the numbers. So in case of this, that trend line, but before that guys, if you have not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the bell icon. And remember, this midweek update is exclusively to my Patreon community members. And from the next week, this midweek update will not be posted on YouTube, because it is exclusive to my Patreon community members. So it will be uploaded and posted only on Patreon. So this is my Patreon page and this is my Patreon profile. I have given the link in the description of the video and also in the comment section. You can follow that link in order to visit my Patreon page or my Patreon profile. And here you will notice that there is this all midweek update videos. So from the next week onwards, those who have subscribed to either this tier or any of these tiers or levels will be able to watch the exclusive midweek update videos. However, those who are looking for the daily precise updates of the S&P 500, once you subscribe to either of these tiers, then you will be getting all midweek update videos, daily S&P 500 analysis updates, movement, levels, zones, and the stock market opportunities. Now, in terms of the S&P 500, there is a very strange situation that there is this much room available for the S&P 500 to trade. Okay. And this much room is approximately 2%. Okay, so this is just the 2% movement. 2% movement. And now there is a short-term trend line in the S&P 500. This trend line is somewhere around 5750. And yesterday and day before yesterday also I mentioned that 5750 is the calculated resistance level. So once the S&P 500, and remember there we have 5733. Okay, so S&P 500 yesterday also it closed very close to 5733 but failed to clear 5733. However, the good thing is that there is a bullish cusp. Okay, and the closing was above 5720. And in my final update, I think in point number 2 or 3, I mentioned that if this kind of closing is seen, this means that the S&P 500 now is in a condition where it can test the 5733 again. It can try to sustain above 5733 and close above 5733 because it is going to get the bullish support. This means that if the S&P 500 is able to sustain and close above 5733, then it won't be any problem, or as such it won't be any issue to breach or to break this trend line. S&P 500 will be having the potential, momentum, movement, everything to breach and to move above or beyond the trend line. Okay. However, if there comes a condition, or however if there comes a situation, condition or situation means that S&P 500 moves up, hits the trend line, retraces and closes below 5733. Okay. In that case, this will be the third or the fourth rejection. In that case, if the S&P 500 survives for next 1 or 2 days, then what will happen? It will move up and then this trend line will weigh heavily on the S&P 500. For now it is not that heavy, but especially in this condition that I have just described, this trend line will weigh heavily on the S&P 500, and S&P 500 will then be restricted to or around 5750 maximum, and then there will be a reversal here. However, a support or a strong support or a strong momentum push will be seen through the Dow Jones. So Dow Jones is very near to, or not near, but at the trend line. Now Dow Jones just need one breakout, one bullish breakout, means there comes an open above the trend line and closing above the trend line. That's it. Or if there comes an open below the trend line and closing above the trend line, okay, that will also work in some manner. Then in that case we'll have to wait for just one more day. So in that manner, what will happen, that once the Dow Jones gives bullish breakout, okay, moves above or beyond the trend line, then automatically the entire US stock market will come into this condition, and the S&P 500 will move beyond 5750 towards 5800, or precisely to 5790. Okay, there is one more intermediate resistance. Okay, however, that resistance won't be considered as heavy or anything, because if the S&P 500 is moving beyond 5750, this simply means that the Dow Jones is in the bullish breakout condition, and thereafter it will be the Dow Jones which will simply push the entire US stock market in the bull side. Yes, tomorrow on Thursday, okay, Fed chairman is going to speak. So because of this, you can see some swings in the market, but eventually by the end of the day everything will normalize and stabilize. Then on Friday there will be the PCE, core PCE data, but because the Fed chairman will clear most of the things, this means that PCE and core PCE data won't be of much value if there comes only a little variation up down. Anyways, on Friday, once the data is released, okay, then I will give you that analysis in the pre-market update. So this was for the bull side. Bearish side. So bearish side again depends on 5750. Where is 5733? Okay, 5733, which is the immediate resistance, and the 42,260 in the immediately there comes 5733, and in the Dow Jones there comes 42,260. 42,260, okay, it is my calculated resistance level which I mentioned yesterday also, okay, and also the trend line is around the 42,260. See, yesterday there was a rejection, it will be considered as rejection. If the Dow Jones remains below the trend line, if it hits the trend line, okay, fails to sustain above the trend line and remains below the trend line, in that case this will be seen as rejection from the trend line. Okay, and the worst part will be that if there comes an open above the trend line and closing below the trend line, that will so that will be the worst part, because that will indicate a heavy rejection. In the similar manner, if the S&P 500 also is seen struggling at 5733, okay, as I mentioned that from 5720 to 5733, okay, there is a strong zone, a strong resistance zone, and S&P 500 has spent almost 4 days and still it failed to clear the zone. Okay, so every inch of this zone is heavy. This means that once the S&P 500 moves above 5733, sustains above, closes above, then it will be free from this zone and will be moving towards 5790. That will be the resistance level just below the 5800. Okay, so 5800 is not the resistance level, okay, or the target or anything like that. Okay, but because generally I do not disclose these the numbers in the weekly technical analysis, that is why, okay, I mentioned 5800. Okay, but because you are my Patreon community member, so 5790 is that the heavy resistance. Okay, so S&P 500, there will be heavy chances that whenever it moves up and the conditions are like that, then it won't be able to hit 5800. It will fail somewhere around 5790 or exactly at 5790. Okay, anyways, yes, so this is a heavy zone. Okay, so this means that if the Dow Jones struggles here at the trend line, at the same time S&P 500 will also be seen struggling around 5733. Okay, and then we will have to wait till closing, because the closing will tell us where it will be heading to. Okay, if the closing comes below the trend line, below the 5733, below the trend line in the Dow Jones, this means a rejection or a heavy rejection. Now question is that if the S&P 500 loses, see, remember, there will not be any fall as long as S&P 500 is trading and sustaining above 5720, and exactly the same I mentioned in the second update. Okay, if you go through the second update yesterday, I mentioned that now it has sustained above 5720. This means that there will not be any fall. Okay, for the entire 2, 3, 4 hours there will not be any fall, or any fall will be limited to 5720, right? And it's sustained above 5720. And for today, okay, if there comes fall, or because of Dow Jones, or because of any reason, in that case that fall will be limited to 5720 at first. Once it loses the 5720, then next comes the 5688, including 5670. Remember 5670, okay, it was the calculated resistance level as well as the previous all-time high. Okay, calculated resistance level was 5669. Okay, previous all-time high was 5670 approx. So if it loses, then comes 5688, which is the next immediate and heavy support. And also we can expect a dip, an intraday dip to 5670 to fulfill the obligation. Once it sustains at 5670, okay, then it will regain the 5688. Once it regains this the 5688, then thereafter it will be able to move up further, okay, towards 5720 and 5733. But once it is seen trading below this heavy resistance zone, in that case it will S&P 500 will have to put a lot of efforts in order to clear the zone, else it will not be possible. Okay, a failure at 5688, okay, this can happen if Dow Jones fails at the trend line, fails to give a bullish breakout, rather comes down, or there comes rejections back to back, 2 or 3 rejections. In that case 5688 won't be able to hold for more than 1 day or so, for more than 4 hours, means at least 1 half it will be able to handle, or more than 1 day. In that case next there will be the same 564431 zone. Then this is the heavy support zone. Okay, this is the heavy resistance zone, this is the heavy support zone in the bearish side. So I hope numbers and everything is clear. But whatever will happen or whatever is going to happen, I will keep you posted through the pre-market update, first update, second update, final update, which I give to my Patreon community members every day from Monday through Friday. And guys, once again, let me remind you that this is the last midweek update that I am posting here on YouTube for free to everyone. But from the next week onwards, this midweek update, which is exclusive to my Patreon community members, will be posted on my Patreon page to my Patreon community. And if you want to get the midweek update videos, then you can join any of these tiers and you will get the midweek update videos. However, if you are looking also for the daily analysis, daily pre-market update, first update, second update, final update, as well as the stock market opportunities, then you can join either of these 2 tiers. And guys, other than that, there are the products, 4 stock market hacks, or these are the premium hacks, okay, 8 stock market hacks and modified technical indicators. And guys, let me tell you that these hacks you might not have heard anywhere, or you might not have seen anywhere. Okay, these are the premium and the hidden hacks. That is why the success rate is almost 100%. But still I mention only 90 to 95%, because I always keep around 5% margin of error. So if you want to buy these products, or if you want to join any of these 3 tiers, then I have given the link in the description of the video and also in the comment section. So guys, this was my midweek update for today on Wednesday, September 25th, 2024, for the S&P 500, Dow Jones, Nasdaq, or for the entire US stock market.